I'll first of all start off with the member for Footscray, who had a wonderful line in the middle of the speech about "we'll leave no one behind." We will leave no one behind because that's the Labor value. When we say we'll leave no one behind, I asked the member for Footscray, is that the 335,000 sole traders who do not get a grant from this government? Because in the words of the Treasurer, we don't have a tax relationship with them. We don't pay tax, we don't want them. That's leaving them behind. Or we could go straight across to the member for Northcote and the member for Eltham, who spoke about the cafes in their electorates, about the businesses, the wonderful businesses, and I am sure, member for Northcote, they are wonderful businesses, coffee shops, restaurants. The freedom of choice will be gone after this pandemic because of your treatment of them, because most of them will be gone. You'll only have limited ones left. You have left them behind. There is so many businesses in Victoria that are going to struggle. Because of the way this government has treated them, and it is going to struggle because the pandemic in this state got out of control because of poor decisions by the Andrews Labor government. Acting Speaker, if you're an arsonist and you go out and you light a fire, and then you go home and you wait for the call, and when that call comes, you go out and assist the community and 700 people die, when you go to court, you are treated as an arsonist. You are not treated as the person that came out and tried to save the lives or fix the issues that you created. You lit the match, and you should be charged accordingly. And that is exactly the same as the Premier of this state. He and his crisis cabinet have made decisions that have led to the wildfire of this pandemic expanding across this state.
Point of order. Member for Oakley.
118 imputations on any member of this House, and the member has just imputed that the Premier has lit a match and caused. This is like an arson attack. Is absolute disgraceful imputation on the Premier, on any member of this House. Appalling imputation. An arsonist.
I'm informed by the clerk that only the member who was criticised can actually take up this point. The member for Gembrook.
Thank you very much. Lit a match and destroyed Victoria's economy. That's what the Premier has done. The Premier has made a decision to ignore. They talk on the other side about being bipartisan, about taking politics out of it. Where was those calls when the Prime Minister offered ADF? Where were those calls when the Premier went out and said, I thank the Prime Minister for those offers of ADF, but I'm not going to take it up? Where were those calls when in PAYAC he misled the community and said those offers weren't on the table? How many times can one man lie to the Victorian community and get away with it? How many times can you must be scared of my speech here in Oakley. You must be really worried about, you should worry about your electorate.
The member for Oakley on a point of order.
Point of order, Acting Speaker. The Speaker in this very grievance debate warned a previous member twice on using the word liar, and this member has taken no notice of the Speaker's ruling.
The use of that word is unparliamentary, and I call on the member to desist in the use of that word.
Can I just confirm, I will assure you that I will replay in every part of my speech the point of orders that have both been made directly from the member for Oakley, as I explained to them the next part. The reason that they haven't been able to go to people's funerals, the reason Victorians can't go and sit with someone as they are dying, the reason a mother the other day was on air on 3AW with her 24-year-old son in a critical condition in intensive care in a hospital was all because of decisions made by a government where 99% of the cases go back to the decision that was made. The match he lit. Daniel Andrews, as Premier of this state, made a call. He is the leader. He continually says, I want to accept responsibility. Well, accept that responsibility and go. He has made the decision that has closed worship centres and places of worship across this state, a place where many people in our community, many people in our community go to so they can get away from the stresses of life, where they can go to for hope, Acting Speaker. Hope, something that was robbed of them from this government. We're sick of seeing the lying that goes on. And then the worst thing that comes out of that, the next stage of this, if anyone was watching the news this week, when Daniel Andrews decides to come out and says he's going to reduce the, change the stage in regional Victoria, at the same time keep metropolitan Melbourne at stage 4. And he turned around and said, I'm going to stop everyone going out of Melbourne and we're going to put a ring of steel. A ring of steel. That in itself is offensive. It should be just simply referred to as Daniel Andrews Jail on metropolitan Melbourne. He has put a ring of steel around metropolitan Melbourne to keep them locked up. No person would celebrate keeping them locked up. Only the Premier of this state would turn around and say, I'm sick of people whinging about it, using human rights as an excuse for us taking away their freedoms. Well, it is. Because those on the other side are more than willing to talk about the human rights until right now when it suits them. Go and read the Premier's speech, exactly when he said that he was sick of people whinging. It is not the way that we're going to deal with this. Can I just quickly go on a topic that is something very important and passionate to me? The Victoria Police. The Victoria Police are an amazing organisation. They have protected us for decades in this state. They have been around for a century. They have done so much for our community. And it's not just the protection, it's actually been out in the community. And recently, we've seen some of the footage on TV that is trying to paint them as negative. I want the Premier to take this into consideration. The changes in the Victoria Police are directed by policy of this government and the Crisis Cabinet. The changes in the attitude of the Victorian Police management, which filters down through that chain, is a direct result of using words like ring of steel in Melbourne. That is not the Victoria we want to see. And can I give you the word of warning? If you keep using police resources to deliver on the policies where you want to create a ring of steel, on the policies that we're going to get tough on Victorians continuously by using the Victorian Police, you will damage the respect of the Victorian Police for a generation. Take that into consideration when you're making these decisions. And I hear the Minister at the table. Minister, you've never been on the front line. You have no concept. You have no concept of what happens out in the street when people lose respect for the Victoria Police. It is an issue that you must face and you are creating. Stand up for the police for once. Stand up against the Premier using words like ring of steel to destroy the respect of the Victoria Police in our state. It is essential. What's worse than this is the Premier then comes out and he wants thanks every time he makes a change. He's brought in policies like the curfew. And I note before you jump in, you all tell me it's working. It's working. Well, can I tell you now that the curfew has nothing to do with the health outcomes of what's happening on the figures in Victoria. Because no one would have got COVID virus going for a run by themselves at midnight. People who have chronic illnesses that were shopping at 10:30 in the evening to avoid crowds are now forced to go out at the same time as the crowds at a busier shopping centre. It just has no common sense or logic, a curfew at all. And then for the Premier to come out and go, hey, celebrate with me. I'm going to give you an extra hour out of your home. Are you kidding me? Get rid of the curfew. It shouldn't have been there. It's quite simple. Businesses. And when I talk about businesses, and the others on the other side will turn around and go, oh, there you are, standing up for those rich businesses. Like my good friend Nick Strauss, who is part owner of the Berwick Motor Group. And they've got Berwick Jeep, Nissan, Kia, Chrysler, Haval, Great Wall, wonderful brands. And I'll get told off because I'm standing up for this bloke who's in there and he's one of the rich ones because he's a business owner. Well, you know what? He's struggling at the moment. And if you go down to his car yard, every car is put into the service lane. There is no cars on the lot. They can't sell a car. And you know what that means? That means there's no jobs. There is no jobs in the car industry. And if you look at the car industry, that's also the servicing. How many people are out of work in servicing because of the actions of this government? They could open, they've got a COVID plan, they've done it before, they'll do it again. And you're preventing so many jobs here in this state based on the decisions that this crisis cabinet and this Premier continues to make. We want to see people back at work. No business in my electorate has come to me and said, I want welfare. They've come to me and said, I want to reopen. And those car industries are nothing other than that. And when they do eventually come back, let's put some of the other issues that are going to be on the table. If you've got a car that's sitting in your lot from December 2019 and you've now been closed for a good part of 6 months and you come back, cars aren't going to sell automatically. By the time we get to January 2021, the car on the lot is a 2019 model, which is nearly 2 years old according to the plate on it. That drops the value, that loses income, that's less jobs. Travel industry. The travel industry is an amazing industry that have struggled through this, and many of them obviously now closed. What was worse was the last 6 months they've been working tirelessly with no income. With no income. The work they've had to do is on refunds and credits, which means when they reopen, that the most common customer they're going to have in their first 6 to 12 months of being open are based on credits from this year, which means, again, Acting Speaker, no income, because they're going to be honouring the credits that have been there from the past. That is not a system that is fair, that is not a system that works, and those organisations need the support. We've heard about sole traders having to have a lease. Let me run it by you in relation to the dog groomers. And one of the ones that was in question today was Susan McKenzie. Susan McKenzie has 5 children under 6 years old. Susan McKenzie is suffering with cancer. And at the moment, she has to make a decision. And that decision is, do I put food on the table and pay my bills, or do I find the $100 for the cancer treatment that I need? And she can't get a $3,000 support package. She can't get support because her business is home-based. She doesn't have a commercial lease. And she can run her business. She actually doesn't want the $3,000 off the government, just to let you know. She wants to open. She wants to open her doors and get an income coming through because, as she says, for her, it is her motivation and her hope. And you've stolen it. This government has stolen her motivation and her hope because you won't allow a home business to open that could actually have an hour between each customer to make sure they've got the hygiene levels in place. And you're ignoring Susan McKenzie and her family, and that's a disgrace. One part of my portfolio is around learners, and I was exceptionally disappointed the other day to hear Acting Speaker when the Premier said that one of the things he would consider for changing to get learners through into their licences is a reduction in the 120 hours required for driving for your licence. Let me just give you a few stats. Deaths in the age of 18 to 20-year-olds was up 100% between 2018 and 2019. 1,800 serious injuries in 2019 alone in that age group. 90 deaths is the average between 18 and 25 on our roads. 2019, the road toll was up 25% on 2018 and the worst in many years. That does not sound like the statistics that you want to put in front of you to say the best option is to reduce the amount of hours of safe lessons and driving before you get your licence and drive alone. That should never, ever be considered. That in itself would create another pandemic on our roads. We have to have safe drivers. The Premier has to come out and say that is not a consideration, because as a parent myself with a daughter on her learners, as many in this House, let me assure each and every one of you, you don't want your children on the road unless they know how to drive safely. You don't want to be on the road if we're putting a group of people on the road who can't drive safely. Our road toll is too important. This pandemic can do many things, but one thing it should never do is reduce safety in other areas, and particularly on our roads, where in a bipartisan approach for so many years, we've had good safety measures come in that has reduced that road toll over the last 20 years. We can't undo that work. Acting Speaker, I grieve for so many people in Victoria, for the small businesses, but most of all, I grieve for the 700 families that have lost loved ones because of the match that was lit by a Premier in this state because he failed in his actions to protect Victorians, which is his core duty.